Sweet, not even late. I had to leave my wife a note about the chicken in the oven. We're not late yet. All right, should we get this party started?
I believe all the planning board members that I anticipate to be here are here.
Outstanding. Thank you, Donna. Okay. Well, let us call to order. Let's see, March 22nd, 2022. Planning Board, Missoula Community and Planning Board. How's everybody doing? I think we have a fairly straightforward evening compared to our last couple of meetings this evening. So with that, let's do roll call.
Okay, I have been advised that Toon Farm, Dave Loomis, and Sierra Farmer will all be absent. Josh Schrader is going to attempt to join us at around 8 p.m. Ellie Costello.
Present.
Ellie Costello is present. Dory Galels.
Present.
Dory Galels is present. Micah Sewell.
Present.
Micah Sewell is present. Rick Hall.
Present.
Rick Hall is present. Shane Morrissey.
Present.
Shane Morrissey is present. Sean McCoy.
Present.
Sean McCoy is present. Mr. Chair, I have 6 regular members present. We have a quorum.
Outstanding. Thank you, Donna. So the next line item is approval of minutes. We don't have any minutes yet from the last meeting. My suspicion is that was a lot of conversation to get typed up. So we will just move on to the next line item, which is public comment from community members about anything that's not on the agenda tonight. So re-emphasize that comments during this period of time coming up are about anything other than what we were talking about tonight, which is a subdivision off of Greeno. So we will open up the phone lines and the platforms for folks to call in, and I will check the attendees as soon as I can get that to come up. I just lost that window. So I can bring it back up. There we go. And I will read out instructions for everybody to follow. So if you're joining in via MCAT, Zoom, YouTube, and are just listening and don't have a way to call in, you can call in on your cell phone. And cell phone users or your landline. Cell phone users can use the number 1-253-215-8782. Or if you're using a landline, you can call the number 1-888-475-4499. The webinar ID is 842-9399-6424. Again, the webinar ID is 842-9399-6424. Password is 999636. One more time, the password is 999636. And if you are calling in on your device, press *9 to raise your hand, and I believe lower it, and *6 to mute and unmute your phone. And the muting part of the device that you're watching on is also very important, because if you're listening to your television or your computer but calling in on your cell phone, we will get a feedback loop. So make sure you mute your device that you are watching the meeting on. You can also zoom in on webinar. You can go to the city website, which is ci-missoula.mt.us, and click on meetings and find us through there. And I think that covers everything for now. So I will open it up now and see if anybody is got their hand up. I see one hand up. Oh, and we don't usually get comments on this portion of the meeting. So Diane Stensland Bickers, if you, let me see if you're getting they'll give you the opportunity to speak. Usually staff has got to release you here. So just stand by and, all right, go ahead. You're free to speak, Diane. Please state your name and for the record.
You did really good, Sean. That was Diane Stensland Bickers. And I just wanted to tell you and the other board members, thank you for volunteering your time and helping out the city like this. That's all. Thanks. Bye.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Diane. That's, I think, much appreciated by all of us. Nice. That's a great way to start the meeting. I don't see anybody else with their hand up at the moment. So we'll give it a minute here. And then go from there. Okay, we're getting close to a minute here. It's nothing. I got a chicken in the oven. I'm trying to make sure it doesn't get burnt. I left my wife a note though. All right, that's enough time. So I don't see any more hands going up. And thank you again, Diane, for your appreciated comment. So that I will close that portion of public comments and moves us on to staff announcements, which there are none tonight. And then we'll
Shane, could I give a quick staff announcement?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Diane.
There will be no meeting on March 29th. I know that we had polled a lot of people earlier and we are holding that date in case we needed it for the zoning code update. So no meeting March 29th, next meeting April 5th. That's all. Thank you.
My apologies, Donna. I didn't write that down. You said it in the meeting, but I didn't write it down. All right, so just that one staff announcement. And with that, that brings us to the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. And tonight we are having David Grand Prix make a presentation on behalf of the city of Missoula and the planning services. And we are hearing about Greeno Heights, a 20-lot residential subdivision and rezoning, which there was a lot of reading with. Go ahead, Dave, it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much, John. Good evening, board members and members of the public. My name is Dave DeGrandpre with the City of Missoula Development Services Office, and I would like to run through a somewhat brief presentation. I'll try to make it as brief as possible for the Greeno Heights subdivision and rezoning project. And I'd like to share my screen now. All right, can you all see that?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, super. So the property is 5.79 acres in size. It's located along West Greeno Drive, addressed at 1006 West Greeno Drive, between Greeno Drive and also Greeno Park and Rattlesnake Creek, located to the south and southeast. Surrounding land uses include apartments to the north, and single unit dwellings primarily to the southwest and northeast. Waterworks or open space and waterworks hill trails are located to the west. The property itself has some interesting features. There's a fair amount, in fact, about 50 feet of drop from up in the northernmost corner here down to the low stretch along the southern boundary. It's generally pretty mild here in the center, mildly sloping that is. And it drops off quite steeply into Cherry Gulch along the south and southwest portion of the property. Cherry Gulch has Cherry Creek, which feeds into Rattlesnake Creek. Development on the property contains a 1940s era home. Well, here's a couple of photos of the property. So the top left one is looking toward the apartments across West Greeno Drive. You can see it's gently sloping upward toward Greeno Drive. And over here on the right side, that's looking toward Mount Sentinel across the valley a little ways. These would be some of the lots along the southeastern portion of the property and also dropping into the Cherry Gulch area. The top photo here is the driveway. It's a man-made driveway that was probably built in the 1940s to serve the existing home. It's kind of sloped up on both, or sloped up on the uphill side and then sloped down pretty steeply. It was graded in some time ago, but that's the view of the driveway for Greeno Drive. You can see in the lower left, there's an existing home, and also on the lower right, there's a barn, and there's one more outbuilding, and those structures are proposed to be removed as a portion of this project. We did have some questions early at the staff level early in this process about whether the home and outbuildings could be considered for the National Register of Historic Places. We consulted with the state of Montana Historic Preservation Officer and also the Historic Preservation Officer for the city of Missoula. They concurred that the property and the structures were not eligible to be listed on the historic register, but they did want to have some notation, some photos, and some historic research done on the property and the structures, which is quite detailed actually. The developer complied with that request before we moved on to this public review subdivision process, and the state and local historic preservation officers were satisfied. So here is kind of the core of the request. This is a 20-lot residential subdivision, and you can see, well, each of the lots would be for residential use. They range in size from 6,670 square feet to 9,615 square feet. And the property, as I mentioned earlier, is 5.79 acres, and we subtract out this open space parcel. The density would be 3.87 dwelling units per acre, or just under 4 dwelling units per acre on the residential area. The lots would be served. Here's Greeno Drive up along the northwest. The lots would be served by an internal subdivision loop road with 2 entrances and exits onto West Greeno Drive. There's adequate site distance to the I guess left and the right as you're exiting the property at both of those. The northern entrance would align with Peggio Drive, which is across West Greeno. In addition to the subdivision road, lots 1 through 6 would be served by an alley in the middle. So the homes would be facing the streets, not the alley, but they'd be rear access from the alley, and the rest of the homes would be accessed off of the internal subdivision road. The subdivision road, I'll talk about it in a little more detail, but it would be lined with boulevards with street trees, sidewalks. The road is proposed to meet city standards for right-of-way, for width, for grade, and alignment, and those sorts of things. West Greeno Drive along the subdivision property, I'll talk again about in more detail in a bit, but it would have sidewalks and curbs, gutters, and boulevards along the majority of the property. And as we'll get to here shortly, the developer is not proposing to have a boulevard along this stretch of sidewalk along the open space area, but would be developing a sidewalk. Just wouldn't have a boulevard. And please, board members, feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions immediately. There'll be other time for questions too, but if you have a question immediately, feel free. And so what I'd like to do right now is to run through some of the review criteria that you have to review a subdivision and also a zone change. And so we'll go through them one by one. The first is growth policy and zoning. So does the subdivision comply with the growth policy, and how does the zoning fit in? So this is a map, a future land use map from the 2035 Our Missoula Growth Policy. And the map, it designates areas appropriate for different types of land uses. It's a generalized map, but it shows areas appropriate for different types of land uses at different densities or intensities of development. So the subject property is recommended to have, or does have a designation, a planning designation, residential medium density, 3 to 11 units per acre. There's a peculiarity about this map though, and that is there's a portion of the property along Greeno Park that is also, it has this parks and open lands designation. And so that's a designation that is appropriate for open areas, parkland, natural resource type protection, and that sort of thing. So it's a bit of it. It's not unique to this property. The growth policy does have some areas, some other properties that are split, but for the most part, the development would certainly comply with the growth policy designation of residential medium density, 3 to 11 units per acre. The current zoning, the combination, the majority of the property that you see in yellow is zone R8 residential. So that's a standard residential district that has an average density of 8,000 square feet per lot or per unit, and which translates into about 5.44 dwelling units per acre. Again, the zoning, it's a bit of a peculiarity. It's OP1 or open space and resource 1, and you know, I don't know all the history of this, whether it was an accident to make the zoning this way or whether it reflected certain intent. But if it reflected intent, my guess is that it was set up to kind of buffer Greeno Park, provide a little kind of setback or separation for Greeno Park. Something that's interesting to note is, so right now the property, as you can see, it's zoned. It has 2 designations, and that's called split zoning under our the city's Title 20 zoning ordinance. And the interesting thing about split zone parcels is the way that the zoning text reads, the most restrictive applies to the property. And so when a property has more than one designation, the most restrictive designation applies. So what that means here is that the property actually couldn't be further developed without a zone change. Essentially, the open and resource, or the OP1 zoning, applies default to the entire property, even though the vast majority of the property has an R8 zoning designation. So, so changing the zoning on this property is actually a prerequisite for the subdivision. And here's the proposed zoning. I mentioned that they would like to reconfigure. What they're proposing is to zone all of the lots, so the residential lots, R8, and the proposed open space area as OP1. And so again, R8, it's a residential designation. OP1, it's a kind of open and resource type protection. Moving on to some of the additional review criteria for subdivisions. One of the criteria, or 2 of them, I should say, are agriculture, impact on agriculture and agricultural water user facilities. The property is not used for agriculture, hasn't been used for agriculture. I looked at aerial photos going back for at least 3 or 4 decades and didn't see evidence of the property being farmed. There are 3 different types of soils on the property according to the Natural Resources Conservation Service. One is Big Arm Mine Singer Complex, which is not considered prime farmland. That's here, it has the 10 in the center of it. And 114 is called urban land. So I guess the NRCS expects that this area would be developed in the future, so it's not considered prime soils or soils of importance. However, the 3rd soil type, which takes up about half the property, is called Tote Lake Gravelly Loam, which is considered a farmland of local importance. When evaluating the impacts on agriculture, in this case, my recommendation is a finding of no significant impact on agriculture or agricultural water user facilities. I failed to mention that there are no irrigation facilities on the property or in the vicinity of the property, so irrigation facilities would not be impacted in any way. But I'm saying finding no significant impact on agriculture because the property has not been used for agricultural production. It is not used for agricultural production. It's about 3 acres total of the roughly 6, and you know, it's really planned for urban development. This area, as indicated in the growth policy. Moving on to local services and public health and safety, 2 of our additional criteria for subdivisions. All of the lots would be served by city water and sewer. City water and sewer lines would be extended from existing lines in the immediate vicinity. They would be located within easements. and be made in accordance with city policies with review and approval by City Public Works and Mobility Department, by the City County Health Department, and also the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. The City of Missoula Public Works and Mobility Department has indicated that they can serve the property with city water and sewer, so long as the developer makes improvements that accord with city standards. Solid waste would be provided by Republic Services. Local school districts have reviewed the proposal and found no significant impacts. In terms of school busing is available right along Greeno Drive. There isn't currently a school bus stop located within, well, it's about 500 feet from the subdivision, one of them. I think it's the Hellgate. But in talking with the school district personnel, they said if and when demand occurs, if and when public school students reside in the subdivision, they can adjust school bus stops at that time. So I think that there's no need to be concerned about that at this point. The project has been reviewed by City Fire and Police. As you probably know, the city fire station is located very close by, within a half mile, just down the hill, and the city police is at City Hall, about 1 mile from the subject property right downtown. So no concerns there. We do expect at least one new fire hydrant to be installed, and that would be reviewed and approved by the city fire department, as well as street signs for identification of the road, and also stop signs and those sorts of things. So the project does not appear to have a potential negative impact on public health, safety, water, sewer, or the other criteria here. In terms of Parkland, there is a Parkland dedication requirement for subdivisions. In this case, and it's under state law. We're given the kind of the formula for how Parkland dedication is determined, and based on the lot sizes, 11% of the property would have to be dedicated as parkland or provided as cash in lieu of parkland. The developer has worked with our city parks and recreation department, and they've determined, I guess in tandem, that the open space area that surrounds Cherry Gulch, it's kind of a steep draw. It has some big, beautiful ponderosa pines there, and provides wildlife habitat and water quality protection. And the city has indicated that they would be happy, or we would be happy, to accept it as parkland and manage it as a natural area. There are some noxious weeds, including Russian olives, hound's tongue, and others in this area, and so a condition of approval is to remove those prior to final plat approval. But the city has indicated a willingness to accept it and manage it in a natural state. The developer is actually proposing about 10,000 square feet more of area in this Cherry Gulch than is required under the regulations. So that's found that to be a positive. Original discussions had considered extending a trail from Greeno Park up through this area, but given kind of the steepness, potential for erosion, and water quality and wildlife habitat protection values, we thought a natural area, the city Parks and Rec thought a natural area would be a better approach. There are some transportation issues I'd like to just bring to your attention. West Greeno Drive is considered an urban collector without parking. And under our city subdivision rules, urban collectors have an 80-foot right-of-way requirement. Currently, West Greeno is located within a only 30-foot easement. And so the way this works, so it has 2 travel lanes and shoulders, no bike lanes, no curb, gutter, sidewalk, or anything like that in this particular area. But the way this works is the developer of a subdivision is typically required, when additional right-of-way is necessary, to dedicate half of the right-of-way. So essentially from the center line of the road onto the subdivision property. And you can see this hatched area represents right-of-way that the developer is offering to dedicate to the city. So that would mean 40 feet of right-of-way from the center line of Greeno onto the property, which complies with our rules. I mentioned here, Peggio Drive is across the road, the northeast entrance. City staff and Public Works and Mobility folks have requested that there be a new a crosswalk installed as a condition of approval. That's condition number 4. And then there is a variance request that I'll get to here in a little bit. It has to do with a stretch of sidewalk that would not have, or is proposed not to have, a boulevard, but the rest of Greeno Drive would be developed with what we call half street improvements. And so the developer would be required to, here in the bottom graphic, you can see the existing 30-foot easement along Greeno with the existing road surface. And what's proposed is an additional 4 foot of pavement that can be made into a bike lane at some point in the future, curb and gutter, 7 foot boulevard, and then a 5 foot sidewalk, which complies with our subdivision regulations. So overall, it's looking pretty good. And that's for this entire stretch along West Greeno, with the exception of just this 75 foot area that I'll get to here shortly. For the internal street, it is considered a low density urban residential street based on traffic volume, vehicle trips. And I'm happy to report that this proposal complies in every respect with the city subdivision regulations for right-of-way, for road surfacing, for travel lanes, parking lanes, boulevard, sidewalk, and stormwater. So that's kind of nice to see. That's not always the case for those of you who've been on the board here for a little while. I've often seen variance requests for a roadway. And so the road would have, again, 2 travel lanes, parking lanes, curb, gutter, sidewalk, boulevard, and so would comply with the rules. One thing I did want to point out to you, we at the staff level were puzzling on this a little bit, trying to figure out how to address it. One of the criteria that we have, or one of the rules that we have in our subdivision regulations, is to provide non-motorized transportation facilities. So that would be typically sidewalks. There is a sidewalk coming up West Greeno, but it ends, as you probably know, or you may know, about 760 feet shy of the subdivision where a new sidewalk will be built. And so we were kind of thinking about whether we should try to require or could require sidewalk improvements along that stretch. And there were a few things came up. We consulted with our transportation professionals for the city. We also consulted with our legal professionals, and our legal professionals felt that that was more than we could require of a developer. There are a couple of tests that they think about. Is a sidewalk, would a sidewalk along this stretch of road be made necessary by the subdivision? You could argue that it's already necessary. It might be made more necessary by the subdivision, but it's already necessary. And then also, would it be proportional to the impacts? And I think the answer was probably, from the legal side, no, that it would be disproportionate kind of exaction. And then the other thing is, in talking with Aaron Wilson and others, transportation planners for the city, West Greeno Drive is planned at some point to have to be a complete street. What that means is that it would have curb, gutter, sidewalk, bike lane, be made for multimodal transportation, and also probably transit stops at some point. We don't know when that is, but it's called out in our long-range transportation plan. Currently, there isn't enough right-of-way. I mentioned right now that the Greeno is within a 30-foot easement, so there really isn't enough right-of-way to make those improvements along that stretch of road. And according to Aaron Wilson, our lead transportation planner, if we did make those improvements, it would, right now, it could really limit our options in the future for how sidewalks and bike lanes are developed. So, so they didn't think it was such a good idea. So instead of requiring those improvements, you'll notice that one of the conditions, condition number 6, requires the subdivider and future lot owners to waive their right to protest a special improvement district, which will ultimately be set up to help fund some of the complete street improvements. We don't know when that'll happen again, but we felt that at the staff level, that was the most appropriate way to address this situation. One of the peculiarities of this site is it has some steep slopes. I mentioned at the outset that there's about a 50-foot drop from north to south. And so grading is a pretty significant issue. In order to make the subdivision road and lots, there's going to have to be some, they call it mass site grading, some significant grading. And the developer did a slope study and also hired a geotechnical engineer to assess the building potential for the site. And it's a pretty technical report that has lots of recommendations for the site as well as for future construction. Essentially, what the geotechnical engineer is recommending is that there be more studying done, that that a mass site grading plan be developed, that it be reviewed by the geotechnical engineer as well as the City Public Works and Mobility Department prior to construction. And then when homes are developed, that each home will undergo a specific geotechnical analysis and recommendations for things like grading, for foundations, for stormwater runoff and such. And these are all addressed as conditions of approval, or recommended as conditions of approval. With regard to impacts on the natural environment, wildlife, and wildlife habitat, under Montana subdivision rules, all additional stormwater that's generated from subdivision improvements must be retained on site. Those plans are in kind of rough form right now, how the stormwater will be retained, but additional review is warranted and is recommended as a condition of approval. We were also a little bit concerned about water quality, of course, in Cherry Gulch as it drains into Rattlesnake Creek. So we want to make sure that that the stormwater is retained on specific lots, that there are easements and provisions set up for the stormwater to be retained in swales and also sumps along the road, and that there's future access for maintenance of the stormwater facilities. And then finally, that Cherry Gulch, that Parkland area, be oversized, again, more than is required under the Parkland dedication requirements, to provide a little more space for runoff collection and retention, and also for water quality preservation. There are two variances that are being requested, and the first one has to do with what's called contiguous building site. So under our city subdivision regulations, before it's developed, each lot must have at least 2,000 square feet of contiguous area, which does not contain slopes greater than 25%, and that also is outside of the required setbacks. So basically, you must have a pre-construction building site of 2,000 contiguous square feet. What you see here with the colored map is a slope map. And so the yellow indicates slopes on the property that are between 0 and 15%. So fairly mild grade. The green is between 15 and 20%, blue 20 to 25, which is really kind of our upper limit in our subdivision regulations, and then red is anything over 25%. So you can see that there is a driveway. I showed a picture of it at the outset. The driveway that was punched in several years ago to provide access down to the home and the barn. The barn's located about here. The home's located down here. And the resulting slopes, it was kind of elevated and made it, and so there are slopes that come off of both sides of it. So to some degree, those resulted in areas that are over 25%. When and if this subdivision is developed, that area will be graded out as part of the grading plan, and each lot will be made with a suitable building site. But at this point, pre-development, pre-subdivision, a variance would be needed. Lot 19, which is located right here, currently has about 1,132 square feet of contiguous buildable area. Lot 20 has about 1,670 square feet of contiguous buildable area. And again, both of these lots are located along that existing driveway, or right near the existing driveway. We have specific variance criteria in our subdivision regulations and also state law. So I'll just do a quick evaluation. It's provided in more detail in your staff report, but the main criteria really is, if the variance is granted, could it result in a threat to public health, safety, or general welfare, or be injurious to other persons or property? And so, to the developer's credit, they commissioned a geotechnical report as well as a slope study analysis to really look at the soils on site. They did soil borings, soil testing for things like suitability for developing for foundations, streets, things like that, and found that the lots are safe for building so long as the grading plan is reviewed and approved by a geotechnical engineer as well as our engineers, and also that that stormwater runoff be managed to prevent erosion, and that through the building process on each lot that there be some checks and balances. So that means that the geotechnical engineer designs the plans for home construction or for foundation right at the outset, as well as stormwater, and then checks up on them during construction, and then signs off afterward, signs off post construction. And we have the ability at the city through our building permit process to make sure that happens. So I guess my conclusion is that the threat to public health, safety, and general welfare, or other persons of property is minimal, so long as those safeguards are put in place. And then other criteria are the conditions unique to the property based on property shape, topography, or other factors. And I think, yes, the property is steep. It has that driveway that was graded in earlier. So, it comes down to, is there a hardship if the variance is not granted? And I think that, given the fact that the property can be developed in a safe manner and an environmentally sound manner, then I think, yes, there would be a hardship if those lots were not developed. The variance would not violate the zoning or growth policy, would not increase public costs, and this hardship is not created by the applicant. So staff recommends approval of variance number 1. The second variance I mentioned earlier in this presentation, it's for the short stretch of sidewalk area. So it's about a 75-foot stretch along Cherry Gulch. And so it's right kind of at the entrance to the property along West Greeno Drive. And here's a shot from Google Maps or Google Street View showing, you probably know that there's a guardrail along this stretch of Greeno. Right now we're looking down into Cherry Gulch, and below that would be Greeno Park. So people, when they're walking or biking, typically go on the other side of the guardrail because it's a fairly tight road. Traffic moves, I think, about 30, 35 miles per hour. And so right now you can see this path that's worn in on the other side. And so instead of having a typical 7-foot boulevard and 5-foot sidewalk, the developer is proposing, I'll show you a picture, to provide an additional 4 feet of paved area plus 2 feet of curb and gutter, and then an elevated 6-foot sidewalk instead of your standard 5-foot sidewalk. There'd also be a retaining wall, a guardrail on the outside of this, and then a retaining wall coming down. And so, the concept here is, if the developer had to have, in addition to this, another 7-foot boulevard, it would push quite a ways into Cherry Gulch. It would have impacts on the site itself, on water quality, wildlife habitat. It would be an additional expense, although we're not really supposed to consider expense so much. But in any event, is it necessary given kind of the plans in place? And staff is recommending approval because currently there are no bike lanes. There is no sidewalk. I mentioned that walkers and bikers use the shoulder behind the guardrail right now. We feel that this is a significant improvement, and given the topography and the constraints of the site, that this is a fair compromise. So we feel that there isn't a threat to public health and safety, that the conditions are unique to the property because of Cherry Gulch, the steepness, and this is less injurious to water quality and wildlife habitat than if our regulations were followed. So we feel like this is a good compromise, and are recommending approval of this variance as well. So to wrap things up, there are 4 proposed motions. The first one is rezoning, and it's approval of the rezoning, basically the reconfiguration of the R8 residential and the OP1 open space. We're recommending approval of variance number 1 and variance number 2, and also approval of the subdivision, subject to the 22 recommended conditions of approval based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report. And that concludes my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dave. Do board members have any clarifying questions for Dave at this point in time? You can get any clarifications you might need. I see Micah's got a hand up. Go ahead, Micah.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for the presentation. I just had a question about the split zoning. So is this property, if we rezone it, is it no longer considered split zoned?
That's right. And so I'll go back to the graphic. So what we would do is we would essentially create 20 residential lots and then 1 open space lot. I'm almost there. So the property this would be a separate parcel, this OP1 area.
So it's just the fact that the current zoning crosses what would be these parcel lines that are being created. That is why it's considered split zoned as it is now.
Well, the way it is now, this is one parcel, 5.79 acres, and it has 2 zoning designations. So that's the concept behind split zoning.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Rick.
The new OP1 space looks like it is at least equivalent to the old OP1 that's being lost. How does it compare in acreage?
So currently the OP1 area is 22,621 square feet. So 22,621. And the new open space area is 27,557. So the new OP1 would be larger than the existing OP1 area.
Got it. Thank you.
Dory, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Dave, for the presentation. Just a quick question about the crosswalk. I love the idea of a crosswalk on Greeno. I think we need one. But I had a question about sort of the intent. I mean, other than connecting the 2 subdivisions, do the folks who live up Peggio Lane have access to open space up there? I mean, what was the purpose of the crosswalk, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Well, the purpose of the crosswalk is to allow people who live uphill from this property and the multi-family units to be able to access, to have a safe crossing of Greeno, and there'll be sidewalk along this subdivision property that they could use to get closer to town. Hopefully, they'll ultimately, or in the future, there'll be additional sidewalk to get into town. So it's to make a connection.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else got any clarifying questions or anything they want to ask of Dave? And then if not, we'll go ahead and open it up to the developer from IMEG. Gosh, let me find my notes. Dave thought maybe Ann Vickers might be presenting. I'm not sure who's here from IMEG, but I see a different name associated with them in the queue here. But if nobody else has any more questions at the moment, we'll go ahead and move on to the developer's presentation, and then you can ask some more questions then, and then we can make a motion and leap into the meat of it. Or so I'm not seeing any more hands up. So not sure who's with IMEG here. IMEG representative, would you guys like to say anything? Oh, I see Anna there. Great, Anna, I see you now.
Hi, thanks everyone. Give me just a moment. I'll share my screen with you all. I just wanted to say thanks for being here tonight. I know we all have busy schedules, and a special thank you to Dave. He does a super thorough job, which makes my life a lot easier. Can you all see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'm not seeing it.
Let's see.
I can see the screen, but it's just black.
Oh man.
Oh, yeah, it does say has started screen sharing.
Well, I'm sorry. Because on my end, it just says I'm sharing.
And maybe turn off your camera.
Yeah, I'll try that. Actually, my whole video is frozen. I'm just going to tell you that Dave did a great job, and everything that I have is pretty much a redundancy of his. The only thing that I saw that he missed is I wanted to emphasize that our street is built to on both sides, in addition to the on-site parking requirements. So because these are individual dwelling units, the sizes will be based for parking will be based on how big the house is, and that will be determined at building time. So I just kind of wanted to bring up that point, and our stormwater would be mitigated through 6 dry well sumps, as well as we're going to have a swale at the back end of the property that's going to protect runoff so that this does not interfere with any of the Greeno Heights Park or anything like that. So I just wanted to bring up a couple of those points, but those were, if you have any questions, just let me know. But I'm just here on behalf of our developer, which is Greeno Heights LLC. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Anna. Is there any questions from board members for Anna at this point in time? Oh, Rick, go ahead.
Well, I saw in the plans that you intend to remove and remediate a septic tank. Is that right?
Yeah, so currently the house that's on the property does have a septic tank that was with it. And so we'll remove that and follow all the DEQ protocol for removing that. All of these new homes will be connected to city sewer. That's better for the environment. And so our plan is to connect to city water and sewer.
And one more question, is there a page of your presentation that I could see the swale on? I know you can't share your screen, so.
I'm not sure. I just know that it's going to be on the very back portion of the property, like so on the back lot lines. I'm not sure if Dave has that either, but that could definitely, those plans will be approved by city engineering, so they'll be in our grading and drainage report. And I'm not sure if you guys get a full copy of our application, but they're in the grading and drainage report is in section D of the application, if that helps.
And I forgot that's yet to be submitted as well. So that's right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Anybody else with any clarifying questions? And then if that's all the presentations, we'll open it up for public comment and allow the public to give their feedback. I'm not seeing any board members' hands going up, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up public comment for the Greeno subdivision. And I will read off again the litany of things that go with joining in and participating in the modern computer age. So if you are joining in via MCAT or Zoom or YouTube, I forget all the list, Spectrum Cable Channel 190, and watching this via some device, and you'd like to call in with your cell phone or your landline. Cell phone users can call in on 1-253-215-8782. Landline users can call in on 1-888-475-4499. The webinar ID is 842-9399-6424. Again, the webinar ID is 842-9399-6424. And the password is 999636. One more time, 999636. And to raise your hand to let us know that you would like to make a comment, press *9. And I believe that is how you can lower your hand as well. And then *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And also a very important thing to keep in mind is if you are watching the meeting on one device and then calling in with your phone, please make sure you mute the device that you're watching us on or watching the meeting on, because that feedback will come through on your phone and it creates an echo and sometimes we can't hear folks. And I think with that, I think that covers all the notes. I always feel like I'm forgetting something. Anyway, with that, we'll open up to public comment. Let me switch over to attendees and see if we have anybody. I don't have anybody in the queue at the moment. Hopefully everybody read through the public comment that came in via written comments. And if for some reason you missed those, we can direct you all to them to look at them. Well, we'll just give it a minute here, and I don't know. We'll give it 2 or 3 minutes. give folks an opportunity to join in. If board members, if you need to take a little break or anything, you can feel free to walk away for a second. But we'll give it, I got 6:50, so we'll give it till 6:53 and give everybody an opportunity if they like to join in. Maybe they're just starting the process now. Oh, okay. We got somebody that is joining in. Oh, wait, their hand just went down. Nope, went back up. Great. It's all over the place. I saw who it was that time. So Nancy Selden, your hand's gone up and down a couple of times, but if you're listening and can hear me, we've opened it up so you can make a comment, so you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Okay. Oh boy. I did mute my Zoom.
Let's see if I can be of any assistance. What else? So you're watching it on your computer, you're at home?
Yes.
Can you mute the computer as a whole, maybe? Do you have that
I did.
ability? Well, the echo's not too bad. Well, maybe it is. Go ahead, try it out. We'll see what we can make of it.
I just hung up my phone. Okay. I have a couple of questions. I live up Greeno Drive from the proposed development, and I've been watching that property for 30 years, knowing it was eventually going to get developed. And I've been watching all the dirt moved in, and in order to create a buildable grade. And I'm concerned. I wonder what's going to be put at the east side of that property, so that all that dirt doesn't just wash right down the hill. That's one concern. Shall I do one at a time, or shall I?
Please, yeah, just go through your list.
Okay. The second is that there was a meeting that was scheduled for May 26th with a call-in number. It was not a Zoom. It was a different kind of a call. I called in and I sat and sat and sat and sat for probably half an hour waiting for that meeting to start, and it didn't happen. Or something's wrong on the IMEG statement about it. I'm concerned. A third, that's just a comment, not a question. A third concern is that hill, as any of you who live or drive on Greeno Drive, is very steep, and in the winter, it's often very icy. And then if you go down the hill and there's a train, you're really in trouble because it's hard to stop at the bottom of that hill, and cars get backed up the way things are now. Is there any planning around, first of all, getting out of the development with a left turn when there's traffic in the mornings, and in the morning, people coming down the hill, and about just the danger of that steep hill?
Okay, is that all of your questions at this time, Diane?
Nancy, I'll stop there for a
Oh, I'm
minute.
sorry, Nancy. I was
It's
looking at
okay.
the
It's
wrong
okay. It's okay.
name. My apologies.
Yeah,
And so is that everything?
for the moment.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. I think all of your points are notable for sure in looking at this subdivision. Maybe we'll see, we'll address your questions and comments to staff once we get through all the public comment, and board members take notes and we make sure that we have them addressed.
Okay. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. Okay, so nobody else has joined in since we gave Nancy an opportunity to make a comment. I gotta make a quick note here, so we'll give folks a few more minutes. Okay, I am not seeing anybody else joining in here. And so I'm gonna just drag my feet a little bit because I want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity before we shut this down. Because tonight when we close public comment, that'll be it. Unlike the last few meetings, we've kind of been holding it open a little bit in order to give folks the opportunity to speak. So I think not seeing anyone else, pardon me, that was the timer, which I forgot to announce. I think not seeing anybody else, we will go ahead and close public comment for this. And I'll keep an eye on it and see if anybody goes into that queue before we get to a motion. So that kind of brings us up to getting a motion on the floor so we can start hashing things out amongst ourselves, unless anybody has any more just clarifying questions at the moment. Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I did have a couple more questions.
Please.
I guess maybe just to Dave. I think what I'm reading on the plans is that Greeno roughly it's 30-foot wide easement. So what the developer is proposing is to take from the center line of the road essentially and dedicate, obviously the 15 feet is already dedicated in some way, and then take roughly an additional 25 feet of their property along the entire frontage to equal the 40 feet. And I just want to make sure that that includes in front of the Cherry Gulch area also. I think that that's what I'm reading from the plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the concept. So the proposed additional right-of-way does vary in width depending on where the center line of the road is, because the road is not always, centered right within the 30-foot easement, but yes. And then I want to pull up the plat, or maybe, let's see here, to show you what I do with it.
While you're doing that, I guess I'll just say the reason I'm asking is just in case there ever was a desire to put in a boulevard or something like that, improve that area would be in an easement and it could be developed with a boulevard or something like that, should it be necessary.
Yeah, and so you can see, so here's the open space area down in the lower left corner, and there is this hatched area shows additional right-of-way that the developer is dedicating or is proposing to dedicate. So it is along the entire frontage, including the Cherry Gulch area.
Okay, great. I guess maybe the question to Anna or Dave, it doesn't much matter. I guess maybe just to get into some of Nancy's questions if we can. I think what I was seeing in the application is that, the area, where we're moving dirt, it needs to be, reseeded and planted within the first year in order to prevent that erosion. Is that kind of the erosion strategy on the site? Basically, move the dirt around and then they're able to stabilize the soil through plantings and stuff like that. And is that the general gist of it?
I didn't know if Dave wanted me to talk or if he wanted to talk. Yes, we're gonna grade the property as necessary and as recommended by city engineering as well as a geotechnical third party to make sure that all structures are safely built. And then the property will be reseeded according to the weed management plan, and we have that, and as well as making sure that we have as well as making sure we follow the SWIP procedures that are guidelined in DEQ so that there isn't any runoff or anything like that that would affect any of the areas nearby. So it's all planned for and approved and inspected as such.
And then maybe just one more quick one, if that's okay. So I think what I was reading in the variance number 1 is that essentially, I think variance number 1 is related to the buildable, contiguous buildable areas, is that the burden of regrading those lots is on the eventual purchaser of said lot. Is that true? And I guess I'm wondering, like, how and when the final plat gets done. Seemingly, if it's before there's a purchase of the lot, then the lots would still be in non-compliance. And why not put the burden on this subdivider?
So a couple of things to address, and that's a great question, Shane, but there will be a mass grading done by the subdivider, and you cannot sell lots until it's final platted. So right now, this property is not going to be in lots until we're done making the final plat and getting everything approved. Part of the city's platting process is making sure that we address city water and sewer and stormwater and grading and roads, etc., in order to do the final plat. And that's our plan, is to follow all the city protocols. So we will have a grading that's done mass on the property, and then as necessary, if lot owners say they want a day-late basement, they can come in and they can do what they feel like they would like to do for each of their homes. And so that is how that will be addressed. They also, as one of the conditions that Dave outlined to you, they'll also have to get a geotechnical report that is for each of their structures that they build to make sure that that is safe for them, or if they want to build that day-late basement, that they have it engineered correctly. So there will be a mass grading. It's not going to all fall back on new lot owners. That happens.
All right, you're good, Shane? Yes, I'm gonna assume your hands down, you're good. Okay, so I got Dory and then Ellie next.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a question. I didn't see anywhere in the materials I read any discussion of speed limit in that section of Greeno Drive. And I know that below this subdivision, I believe the speed limit drops to 25 and that it increases to 30 and then it drops to 25 again at some point on that drive. And I actually was on site today and took a look at it, and I've ridden that road on my mountain bike many, many times. And there are, you can see cars coming either direction if you're going to pull out, but there are some hindrances to that as well. There's little rises in the road. And so I'm wondering if there's any consideration about dropping that speed limit, or have there been any discussions about dropping that to 25 in front of that subdivision to kind of make that more continuous?
I don't know if there have been discussions about the speed limit at the public works, or city police type level, but I would like to show something that would maybe provide a little bit of insight, I think, on your question, as well as on Nancy Selden's question about traffic safety. So this was one of our concerns at the staff level as well, when we were first looking at this subdivision, was given that there are some rises and falls, a little bit of curve in the road and that sort of thing. So if you're coming out on each of these roads, looking left and right, would you have adequate sight distance to the left and the right based on the speed limit that's in effect right now? So it's a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit at this location. And so this is something that the developer provided based on city staff's request. And so what you see here is they call it a clear vision triangle, or essentially it's how far can you see when you're in a normal vehicle at the intersection. And so looking to the left, so this is from the one closest to town, the intersection closest to town. Looking to the left, you'd be able to see about 290 feet at 30 miles per hour. And then looking to the right, about 335 feet. And so that does comply with all the kind of transportation professionals type guidelines. And similarly, here's a look at the vision triangles from the other roads of 290 feet to the left, and then again 335 to the right. So we at the staff level felt like that was adequate. It meets guidelines, and so they're pretty good. But I don't know about other discussions that have taken place, if there's a need or a desire to lower or change the speed limit, make it consistent or what have you. Similarly, Ms. Selden talked about the hill steepness and ice and those sorts of things. I guess I can't really answer whether, kind of the status or whether there are other thoughts right now about other improvements along the road.
Thanks, Dave.
Go ahead, Ellie.
Hey, thanks. This has been a really thorough report, and it seems like IMEG has done a lot proactively leading up to this meeting. So I appreciate that on both accounts. And I was wondering, looking through some of the comments, there's a neighborhood, like a joint neighborhood council that gave a lot of comments about this. And one of them was that they suggested perhaps not having a raised curb, but that it would be preferable to have it be flush. And I understand for public safety why you'd want to raise curb. Their argument was that it was about water runoff. Can you guys just address that? Like, is there any reason that would be something you'd want to do?
Well, I can address it from the city's standpoint. And that is, we have a certain set of rules, certain specifications for different types of roadways. And so and it's based on what we call the functional classification. So what that means is the volume of traffic really, and also the purpose of the road or the function of it, who it serves, how many people it serves, how many vehicle trips, speed limits, and those sorts of things. So, the adopted rules for this urban collector is what Greeno is, requires, the standard, we call it cross section, requires, the driving lanes, bike lanes, curb, gutter, sidewalk. And so to do anything different from that would require the subdivider to ask for a variance. And so, it's not always as fluid as we would like. It's harder to make kind of site specific decisions, or, and I don't know whether that would be appropriate. I'm not saying that would be an appropriate way to construct the road in this area or wouldn't. I really don't know. But from a kind of a procedural / regulatory standpoint, we have certain specs for this type of road, and we'd like to adhere to them. Not to say that we're not looking to change them at some point in the future, or I think we really do. There is a desire of the city to have more context sensitive or location specific sensitive type designs, but at this point, it's not that easy. So I guess hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And then I have a couple more. One is from those same comments. I'm not sure that it's that important, but they suggested getting rid of the guardrail, which I imagine with the new design and the guardrail being on the exterior to where you'd be walking. So it would be much more effective for safety, that wouldn't be an issue. I just wanted to kind of note it, that was a comment. But then I have a question about the site design with, I realized too that it's completely in compliance, but I wondered, like, is there any, like, what is the street parking like? So there's the driveways, but then like people come visiting, it just looked really tight to me. So was wondering with all those driveway cuts, how street parking would work or what kind of accommodations there are for that.
Anna, would you like to?
Sure. Okay. Hi. So these lots are pretty large, and that's a great question. Parking's always a concern for everybody, right? We don't want anyone to be in the way in the public. So we've designed these neighborhood streets to be drive lanes that are 10 feet wide, and then we would also have an additional 7.5 feet for parking on both sides of the road. Obviously, these are going to be pretty large lots, and there's probably going to be garages on most of them. And so I would think that many people will just park in the garage and then have the driveway as well. But should they have any visitors or need extra space, that'll be mitigated by both sides of the parking for the road. Sorry, it's been a long day. I made a site visit this morning as well, so I apologize, guys. And just to further jump in front of the curb, we have the fire hydrant, and that'll be painted red so that there is no blocking for fire hydrant for the fire department. These will be city maintained streets and alleys, so towing away should somebody be in the wrong place will be very easy to do, and it's not falling back on a homeowners association or getting lackadaisical. Like, we're trying to do everything we can to make this as safe and efficient for the neighborhood as we can.
Thank you.
Okay, so I had Micah and then Dory again, I believe. So go ahead, Micah.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions about the geotechnical analysis and review, specifically just about that slope, because I know that the steepest slope is actually off of this lot. It's what divides this lot from Greeno Park. There's a very steep slope going down. And so when the geotechnical analysis happens, does that take into account the possibility for, slippage or things happening that are off, outside the lot? And then if there is a possibility that, the development of this lot could affect, that slope, and there were, stabilizations or things that had to happen, what would be the process for that? What would that look like, since it's, affecting something off-site?
Okay, I'll try to answer as best as I can here. So if I would have gotten to share my presentation, I had it highlighted for you guys that on the property, as you said, the steep slopes are off of our property, and the current house is built right against the property line. So we are required to have a 20-foot setback from that property line, and it's probably assumed, and we could all guess, but it's probably assumed that these houses are going to be built closer to the front of the lots, as most people like to have backyards and such, and it gives a nice view of the park. But that 20-foot setback is there to protect the hillside. And then also there is the, SWIP review and the permitting and the inspection and stuff. So if that were to be a violation, then we would have to undergo whatever is necessary by DEQ or the city. As of crossing our fingers, that's not a thing, but that would be something that we would have to correct if it were. But that setback should really help with that.
Sean, can I address it a little bit too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Dave.
Great. Yeah, we at the staff level have been a little bit, been thinking about this same issue as well. And so did the geotechnical engineer. And so, here's a copy of the plat, and these little, it might be a little hard to differentiate on your screens, but you've got these little kind of darker circles, and these are where proposed sumps would be. So they're proposed to collect runoff from the road, essentially from the roads and sidewalks. But on the individual lots, the plan, and the geotechnical engineer actually specifically said we don't want to have sumps undermining the slope. So we don't want sumps throughout the property. So for all of like the homes, driveways, and that sort of thing, we want to have more individualized stormwater collection and retention on the lots. So the sumps would be because additional water concentrated in specific locations can undermine the slopes. And so that's one of the reasons for additional geotechnical review and why we want to have that. So I mean, I think at this point, the preliminary plan is that subs would collect runoff from the street improvements, but from the lots, that there would be kind of site-specific runoff collections from swales and backyards and things like that to collect from the homes, the driveways, et cetera, to have a slower kind of infiltration. So you're not concentrating so much runoff at points, so to speak.
Yeah, it's very helpful. Thank you both.
Go ahead, Dory.
Thanks. Okay, sorry, I have just a couple more quick things. I noticed there's a number of conditions listed here for approval, and a couple of which address revegetation, weed control, boulevard, landscaping, and maybe this is a question for Anna, but I'm wondering if you guys have considered or would consider sort of water-wise application of landscaping. You know, this is kind of a natural area. You've got beautiful views of Jumbo in one direction, you've got Waterworks Hill the other, and you've got Greeno Park below. And I just wonder if that would be a consideration here. You know, I would love to see some of these developments start setting examples for that kind of stuff. And I know it's not something we necessarily require, but I just kind of wanted to throw it out there and see if you've had any thoughts or discussion around that.
You know, it's not something that we're close to. It's definitely, you know, the developers on the call, and I could certainly discuss that with them at some point. We generally get these weed management plans approved by the city county weed department, and some of these comments that you're seeing and conditions that you're seeing, it's so that we can incorporate some new items that they've brought to our attention, and we're happy to do so, and we'll continue to do what we can to make this successful. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I can definitely bring it up to him and see what he says. But I just generally, we go off of exactly what is recommended to us.
Great, thank you. And Dave, a quick question for you regarding the disconnection in the sidewalks. I understand too from public comments, and I think it was in the documents we were given too, that Greeno Drive is slated for repaving, I believe, this summer. And I'm wondering if there might be a short-term solution, even just with painting on the roadway, that would help provide some more continuity between, you know, where one sidewalk ends and another begins, that may be an inexpensive short-term solution on those disconnects.
I can pass that on to the transportation planners.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions? I'm not seeing anybody's hands up. I'll take a stab at a few here that I haven't heard yet. So probably for Dave here. So I saw some of the comments from Northwest Energy, and it seemed like the OSHA encroachment for lots 22, 1, and 7 was still perhaps an open-ended question mark. I was wondering about that to start out with, Dave.
Sure. So the issue is, the way I understand it, there are overhead power lines along Greeno. And so I think Northwest Energy was thinking about how power might be brought into the subdivision and how homes might be developed so that there isn't a safety issue. So that there's some sort of a setback or separation between the overhead power lines and home construction. And so the way I understood it, I followed up with I forget the gentleman's name, but the fellow from Northwestern. And it seemed to me that the street side setbacks, which are 20 feet along West Greeno, it's a minimum 20 feet, would be sufficient in order to address that concern.
Okay, and that seemed feasible. That seemed within.
That's the way I understood it from our email discussion.
Okay, great. I didn't. Maybe I missed that part. And then also they brought up in there the no utility easements, and I've been trying to look at that plat and see if I'm just missing that or.
No, it's pretty far into the weeds. It's in the water and sewer. It's in the more detailed water and sewer plans. And the issue is, of course, city utilities, water and sewer need to be within public access and utility easement so that the city can maintain them over time. And there are also city policies, like you can't have trees right up against, city water mains, for example, things like that. And so right now, the way I understand it, to the north where the water line will connect into, this is up near Peggio Lane, uphill from the project. There's an existing water main that does not appear to be within a public utility easement right now. And so that's one of the conditions, is that the developer acquire an easement so that the construction can occur, a connection can occur within that public easement, and then also over time the city can maintain it and has the right to do so because it's within a public utility easement.
Okay, I must have missed that. Which condition is that?
Let's see.
Dang it, I tried to read all of those.
Well, they're pretty detailed. It's hard to get all of it. Let me see.
So there's one about on condition 14, Dave, is the Peggio Lane.
That's the one.
Mhm.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, so kind of going up, playing off a little bit of Nancy Selden's public comment. I'm wondering if like the infill that needs to take place, is it necessary to have a retaining wall? Like, how significant is that? Because this seems to butt up against the Greeno Trail fairly closely. So I've been kind of wondering about that, whether a retaining wall is what is needed, or is it just a graded slope down to the trail?
So if you're talking about building on Cherry Gulch, yes, there'll be a retaining wall. There's definitely quite a bit of slope there, so that would have to happen. But as for the property itself, I mean, people won't be able to build within 20 feet of that back property line, and that back property line is still off the slope itself. So there doesn't need to be anything more than those swales that are recommended by DEQ.
Okay. Is there any sense of what the distance is between the property line and the trail? I was trying to count it all out, but I couldn't see the elevation difference well enough.
I believe Dave's staff report says it's more than 100 feet. So yeah, there's definitely some of that, and like over 100 feet, I believe. Whenever I was reading through Dave, I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think that the property line is about 100 feet from Rattlesnake Creek at its closest point. The trail is a little bit closer, but the trail is down at, and I can show you if you like. So you can see the subdivision property boundary, then it gets really steep. Just off the boundary is Anna was describing, and you've got the trail down at the bottom. So I'm not sure exactly what the scale is, but I think if you imagine that it's about 100 feet from lot 14 down to the street to Rattlesnake Creek itself, so it might be 60 feet to the trail. This is just rough estimate, something like that.
Okay, great, thank you. I was having a hard time discerning that. Okay, what other, so I have a couple more questions. So, and I think maybe this one might be for Anna. Looking at condition 6, the waiver of the right to protest, I wanted to clarify that you guys were okay with that, because that seems to be a fairly significant waiver in my mind anyway.
Yes, we are. That's a standard thing for most subdivisions. So as anything, people would obviously be living there, and they'd want to see improvements to the neighborhood as they need to, so.
Okay. And then I have one more, at least one more question. And Dave, I think maybe this one's best for you. I was just looking at the driveway or the entrance streets off of Greeno, looking at the turns there and wondering about if there was any consideration to maybe like looking at making that a one-way, like turning off of one way and only entering on across from, I can't think of the name of the street now. But where the two streets meet there's a subdivision that goes up above. To me, it kind of seems like if we had one entrance point for two different subdivisions rather than two in a row for traffic going up and down, that might be safer. I don't know. I'm not in the transportation business. But I saw that as I don't know, that was a question I had, whether that was considered at all.
Well, it's an interesting idea. But I guess my thought is it kind of goes back to Ellie's question a little bit earlier about, different types of configurations, different specifications for roads and that sort of thing. And so, in our city subdivision regulations, we have, a standard for a road that serves this number of lots or would serve this amount of traffic. And so it's a two-way road, parking on both sides. And so the developer would have to ask for a variance to do something different from that.
Okay.
And so that wasn't, I don't recall that being part of early discussions. It might be a good idea, but I don't recall it being part of our discussions.
Well,
Okay.
and part of the benefit of two-way entries is fire safety. Fire chiefs like to see two entries at any subdivision that's proposed. So that's another point of that, Dave. Great answer, Dave, though.
Okay. I think that's it. I have a hand up in the other queue, but I don't know. Sorry, I'm just seeing this hand is up. Public comment has been closed, so I believe that's just a public person. And they lowered their hand. So I think that's all I got for the moment. Those were my big pressing questions. Does anybody have anything else for staff, or I guess it's just Dave tonight, Dave or Anna? And if not, oh wait, I see Dory's got her hand up.
Just one more quick one, and maybe this is for Dave. So I know that you mentioned Parks and Rec talked about maintaining this open space as a natural area, which I think is great. The only thing I want to mention is that, when you look up at this area from Greeno, there are some bandit trails of sorts that already exist. And some of those may be created by wildlife, and they may also be created by people who live up on Greeno Drive. And so I just want to encourage Parks and Rec to continue to sort of monitor that, I guess, because, there's going to be, a bunch of houses in there and new people. And I would definitely think there might be interest in getting down to Greeno Park by way of your backyard, so to speak, rather than going all the way down Greeno Drive. So just something for us to monitor because, yeah, again, you've got erosion and things like that when people just create trails where they don't exist.
All right, thanks, Dory. And I see Ellie, you have a hand up. Do you have a question?
I do. I was wondering, this is for Anna, I guess, why do the two lots that need the variance rather than concentrate density a little bit more and leave some of that space that could be in the, more erodible, not the best way of saying it, but some of those sloped areas as is, and then concentrate density a little bit on the lot?
That's a great question, Ellie. So from what we could see, the slope that is on 19 and 20, sorry, I'm looking at my screen to make sure I reference the lot number correctly. A lot of that is from the driveway, and a lot of that very steep part is not within any buildable area. So when you're looking at the property, you have to envision that the driveway is actually part of lot 19 and 20. If you look at your preliminary plat, there's an overlay, and I think it's page 4 of the supplemented data sheets, and it kind of shows that those two lots do have the driveway within it, so it's a lot flatter than they seem. And as for increasing the density, like we kind of, we're seeing a lot of dense projects, and I've done a lot of research on this extensively so I could read the comments that everyone had personally. I'm a resident here, and I completely understand wanting to get some affordable housing out there, and that's not anything that any of us shouldn't be concerned about. But this is kind of within the character of the neighborhood. And, across the street, we've got those apartments, and those are about like 7 dwelling units per acre. Across the park, we have the neighborhood that's there that's adjacent to the park, and those are about 5 dwelling units per acre. If you're on either side of the property, to the north, there is like several homes that are on like 1 dwelling unit for 1.6 acres or more. And then the south, it's about 1 dwelling unit per 1 acre. And we're putting 3.87 dwelling units per acre. And we just feel like that's a good mix. And we're not seeing a lot of single family homes be put on the market. And when you look at some of these housing reports, a majority of these building permits are for apartments and townhomes and duplexes. And that's fantastic. I feel like our goal was to meet what our developer wanted, and their goal was to provide this type of housing, and we're not seeing much of it. And so it's and I really want to emphasize that when you're on that property, those 19 and 20, a lot of those lots are actually the driveway that exists, and that's not going to be where we access. So sorry if that was a roundabout answer, but I hope it got us there.
Okay. I actually have one more question. I just wanted to touch in real quick on Nancy Selden's question about the public meeting, and I didn't get the date written down for it that she tried to attend. Is there any sense, Dave or Anna, of what maybe happened with that meeting? Or
So the meeting was held on May 26th. Maybe I'm not sure why Nancy had an issue with attending it. We did have quite a few attendees that were there, and I actually notified more people than was necessary to notify, and I sent emails to the city council representatives for the ward, as well as the Lower Rattlesnake Community Council, which is what the property's within. I can't speak to why that it didn't work for Nancy. I just know that I did have other people that were in attendance. And unfortunately, as COVID was very looming at the time, we chose to have that as a Zoom meeting, and that's just the standard of way things are being done because we're trying to protect the community. Hopefully, as things get better and we all get vaccinated and herd immunity, we can all get better at that and do in person. But yeah.
okay, great, thanks. Yeah, it sounds like she just had a hard time joining, and as we've all become accustomed to, it's not always easy to get in for whatever reason. Okay, so I'm kind of getting the general sense that maybe we've got our questions out. So Dave, maybe you could put your motions back up on the screen, if you would, please. And then we can take a motion, and I guess it kind of seemed like if we did them in the order that Dave had them, that would be a good way to go about it. However, if staff or Shane, if you've got some different thoughts on that, I am, of course, open to suggestions. If anybody sees this going better, if we tackle the subdivision first, it seems like we got to do at least the subdivision or rezoning motion first. So
I recommend the rezoning motion because the way the zoning is currently set up, actually couldn't approve the subdivision.
yes. Okay. All right then. So if somebody wouldn't mind doing the rezoning motion to get us rolling here, and then we can get into more discussion between amongst us. Oh, go ahead, Shane.
I'll just go ahead and make the motion if that's okay.
Thank you, please.
I move that we approve, I move the approval of adoption of an ordinance to rezone the subject property located at 1006 West Greeno Drive from R8 residential and OP1 open space to a different configuration of R8 residential and OP1 open space based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report.
There a second?
Seconded.
Seconded, was that Micah, I think?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Micah. Seconded. All right. And with that, we can ask more questions or just discuss it amongst ourselves. So I'll leave it up to you all if you have anything more. Are we ready to vote? Oh, okay, there we go. There's Shane. Go ahead, Shane.
Yes, I'll just say my piece. I intend to approve, or I intend to vote yes for this. It seems like providing more open space in a better configuration is a win for everybody, and I intend to approve, or at least vote yes for everything down the line here. So seems like it's the best thing for the piece of property, and I think that there's been a lot of good work done on it, and so I intend to approve it.
Go ahead, Rick.
I think it's a pretty thorough application, and everything makes sense in terms of the variances. So staff did a great job on it, and I think the developer really addressed pretty much every concern I would have had. So.
Ellie, go ahead.
I also intend to support this. I'm not super excited about the proposed subdivision layout. I think it could be more interesting and do more to serve that space and get more housing in there as well. That could still be really effective for the developer. I also have some concerns doing a lot of hiking on waterworks and seeing the parking that kind of spills down that Peggio Drive, that's going to move onto this street as well. And that there's going to be a lot of people parking and then walking across and going up waterworks. And just wanted to put it out there as something to think about for, I don't know that that's anything we can do a thing about, but I do kind of see that happening.
Any other thoughts or positions that anybody wants to convey at this time? Go ahead, Dory.
I'll just say quickly for the record and for transparency that I did spend some time with Bob Giordano, who was representing the Rattlesnake Transportation Committee. I did read over his comments as Ellie referenced them as well. And I just think that they had a lot of interesting things to add. And I just appreciate that, a couple of neighborhood councils are coming together and formed a transportation committee and are taking time to look constructively at this kind of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there for the record. And I too am supportive of this, and I may have a comment on a variance, but I do think that, in terms of our goals for density and in line with our growth policy, this is a good location for a development like this. I have some remaining concerns about people on Greeno Drive and just sort of the current situation we have on Greeno, which is it's not entirely safe now for pedestrians, and we're, going to be adding more people. So.
Thank you, Dory. Anybody else? All right, well, maybe while we get some folks collecting thoughts, I can go ahead and share mine. Yeah, I think I am I'm in support of this subdivision. I mean, it's not necessarily my favorite plan. I wouldn't mind trying to see some connections to the trail, City Drive, or the trail down there through this. I think that might be nice for residents. But that's not really within the city or our scopes to make those types of suggestions as far as I can tell. I would like to also just maybe echo for Dave and to the city. And I know this is something that we discuss a lot, but because we're behind usually the curve as far as updating our roads. Usually goes the building first and then the road second. This area is going to need some considerable work. If you've driven up and down, ridden your bike up and down, whatever it is of this section of Greeno, or all of Greeno, really, all the way up to Rattlesnake, it needs a lot of work. And the point about waterworks trail parking is really valid. I hadn't thought about that, but overflow parking into this subdivision, I'm going to guess, is going to be an issue unless the city is able to catch up some way and create parking up there at the waterworks trail. And then I also wonder about entrance onto Greeno and that traffic as well. So, you know, just as a reiteration to the city and all the fine folks down there, that, and I know that you guys are thinking about this, but it's, you know, another road system that's going to really need a lot of work to accommodate all the people. Other than that, yeah, I think I do. I like Dana's comments on maybe, you know, single family housing. I know that we've discussed that a little bit and the need for some of that within the city, and our efforts are focused a lot on multi-dwellings and lots of people, but I think this works out, seems to work okay. I had some concerns about closest to the trail, but I think that's going to be all right. It seems mitigatable, and that the trees and landscape will help kind of make a buffer there. So that's all I got. And I'm not seeing any more hands raised by anybody. So I will go ahead and call for a vote. And I think we'll just do an up and down vote, since it seems like we have general approval. So all those in favor of the motion for rezoning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed, say nay. No nays, so unanimous approval of the rezoning motion, which brings us to our first variance. If somebody would like to put a motion on the floor, anybody, all you gotta do is read her out there.
Yeah, I'll take this one. I move that we approve the variance request to allow lots 19 and 20 to have less than 2,000 square feet of contiguous buildable area.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Rick. Okay, the floor is open. Any concerns? Go ahead, Micah.
Yeah, I understand the reason behind this. Thanks to the really clear addressing of that by Dave and Anna. So I appreciate that. And yeah, it makes sense to me. I support this, that once the grading of the site, the regrading has happened, then there will be contiguous buildable areas on those lots, but it's just because of that driveway grading that's in there currently is why they don't meet the stipulation right now. So yeah, I support this variance.
Thank you, Micah. Any other comments for the variance at this time? Not seeing anything or any hands coming up. So we'll go ahead and move to a vote, and we'll just do another up and down vote. So all those in favor of the variance number 1, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. None opposed, motion carries unanimously. And that'll bring us to our next motion. Anybody would like to read that out, please?
I can do that. I'd like to make a motion for approval of the variance request to allow no boulevard and a 6-foot street side sidewalk along the open space parcel adjacent to West Greeno Drive without a boulevard.
Is there a second? Is that Rick? I'm sorry, I talked over you. Great, seconded by Rick. Okay, all right. Dory, go ahead.
Thanks. I want to thank the developer and Dave for the great work on this. I know it's complicated. I just want to say, perhaps this is more for city council, that in my short time on this planning board, I'm starting to see a theme. And Sean, you referenced this just now, where, we are, there are proposals coming forward that are in line with our growth policies, for greater density for these subdivision developments. But they are coming before the proper infrastructure is in place on a lot of these streets. And, this is the second one I've seen in the short time here. And so I guess I'm interested in encouraging city council to, reconsider to the extent that we can the timing of complete street development in areas where we are increasing density. And maybe there's an opportunity to revisit some of the timing of some of these areas, particularly ones that present some danger already. So that would be my comment on that.
Outstanding. Thank you, Dory. Yes, I think it always comes down to funding, right? Got to find the money. Bob's really good at that. Would anybody else does anybody else have a comment or some discussion points or questions? It doesn't matter. Once we open up the motion, you're welcome to ask questions or say what you like. Okay, not seeing any. I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote, and we'll just continue on with our up and down votes. And all those in favor of variance number 2, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. And our final motion for the subdivision tonight, if anybody would like to take a stab at that.
I'll make a go at it.
Thank you, Rick.
I move that we approve the Greeno Heights subdivision preliminary plat application, subject to the recommended conditions of approval based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Good.
Seconded by Shane, I believe. Great, seconded by Shane. And any comments, any thoughts? I think we've given them all at this point, so I'll go ahead and call for an up and down vote again. And all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Say no, nay. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, very good, folks. Good job, Dave. It was a good presentation. Thank you, Anna. Appreciate your efforts, and both of you did a great job. And so let's see. Let me find my agenda here. Okay, so I think we just kind of got to make our way through the agenda, and then we're done for the night. So no communications or special presentations for the evening. Oh wait, should I close the public hearing? I think I need to close the public hearing first. So that closes the portion of the meeting for the public hearing, the Greeno Heights subdivision. And we will carry on with the rest of our agenda now. So the next line item is communications and special presentations. And as I indicated before, there is none. We don't have any committee reports tonight. And unfortunately, Tung isn't even here. Old business, we don't really have any old business. I don't even see that Josh was able to, we're before the hour. He was hoping to join in with us. But I believe Donna said that we would be hearing about that letter at the April 5th meeting. And there is no new business or referrals that I'm aware of. And which brings us to comments from Planning board members. So if anybody has a comment or any discussion items that you want to bring up for the board at this time, you're welcome to do that. Go ahead, Dory.
Just real quick, I wanted to let folks know that I will not be able to attend the April 5th meeting. I will be traveling, but I will listen to the recording of it afterward. Thanks.
Outstanding. Thank you for that heads up. Anybody else got anything for this evening? I'd just like to say good job, you guys, for it's been a busy month, a lot of work. We haven't quite seen this many hearings since we got through the first phase of COVID there, and we kind of had a backlog. So appreciate everybody's time and being here. I know it's a lot of work for everybody, and we all have our daytime jobs and families. Not seeing any more hands or anything, so I think that will be it. I will call our meeting adjourned for tonight, and we're a little before 8. So nice job, folks.